Theme. If you've been following these lectures in order, you've heard me talk a lot about theme already. Theme is an integral part of filmmaking. In great films, theme connects in some way every aspect of the creative process, from shot selection to editing choices, color palettes to dialogue, set design to musical scores. Theme in films. That is what we're going to talk about in this lecture today. We'll start by examining how different writers define theme, and then we'll whittle those concepts down to 5 thematic forms. And then we'll explore how different filmmakers deliver themes to the audience. Do they serve it up to you on a platter, or are they going to make you work for it? These questions help define what I, quite presumptively, call the Courtlander-Williams theme matrix. Sounds important, doesn't it? I don't know, maybe it sounds like a time machine. But it is a good way to organize your thoughts when it comes to cinematic themes. But we're going to save the Courtlander-Williams theme matrix for later, and right now we'll just start with Courtlander. Michael Courtlander was a student of mine, whose thesis I directed at Ohio University back in 2009. Michael came up to me that year and said, "Eric, there is no paradigm for theme. I looked in all the best-selling screenplay books I could find, and there's no consistently agreed-upon definition for theme." Now this I had a hard time believing, so I said, "I don't believe it." Yeah, I'm quick when I need to be. Michael stared me down. He said, "Great, so what is it?" he said to me, challenging. I responded quickly, astutely. I said, let me think about that for a minute. And that minute became a conversation that lasted literally for the rest of the year. Our conversation started as a dichotomy of ideas. In my classes, I frequently assign readings by Linda Seeger, Robert McKee, and Sid Field, each famous for their screenwriting books. Collectively, I would say that they teach what many would call the traditional approach to screenwriting. Ideologically speaking, each of them would agree that the screenwriter is an educator with a moral point of view that should be clearly articulated and understood during the course of the film. They would say that that's the point, the focus of the story. So, to state this idea more concretely, a traditional approach to theme is one where the filmmaker tells a story where the main character changes, and this change illustrates to the audience the theme of the movie. A classic example might be the movie Spider-Man, where the moral of the story is, with great power comes great responsibility. This is a moral lesson that Peter Parker, the young man who becomes Spider-Man, may not have considered at the start of the film, but after 2 hours of breathtaking superhero action, we can all agree that yes, with great power comes great responsibility. The audience understands the change that Peter went through and accepts this moral as truth. Now, Michael had sat through some of my classes, and he had heard me teach this traditional approach. But Michael saw storytelling a little bit differently. He was inspired by 2 writers in particular, David Mamet, the renowned playwright, screenwriter, and director, and Flannery O'Connor, National Book Award winner and short story phenom. Both O'Connor and Mamet believed that the role of the writer is to tell stories that underscore the complexities of the human experience, but not to morally educate an audience. Therefore, according to them, the theme of a story, of a good story, should not be concrete or even easily explained. O'Connor thought that stories that only have one clear meaning are flat. Michael would quote O'Connor to me, "When you can separate theme from the story itself, then you can be sure the story is not a very good one. When anybody asks what a story is about, the only proper thing to tell them is to read the story." And Mamet too would agree. He doesn't believe that stories should be designed to change an audience. If they do, that's fine, but that should not be the intent. the intent should be to entertain by shining a light into a world, not by judging it. And so writers like O'Connor and Mamet work with messy and complex ideas, often multiple contradictory themes where the storyteller does not set out to change the audience. No, they're storytellers. They're not educators, philosophers, or theologians. And so Michael and I envision kind of two ends of a thematic spectrum: traditional on one end and non-traditional on the other. Traditional filmmakers have three defining characteristics when it comes to theme. The filmmaker believes that their role is to be a part educator, part philosopher, or part theologian. They do this by developing one clean, concise theme, or a few clearly complementary themes. And these themes are designed to spark a change in the protagonist and an understanding in the audience. Subsequently, on the other end of the spectrum, non-traditional filmmakers also have three defining characteristics. First, they utilize a variety of messy and complex themes, ones that are often contradictory or shifting throughout the story. Now this makes sense because, secondly, they don't want to moralize or lecture to the audience. They simply want to explore the complexities of life. And third, eliciting a change or an understanding in the audience isn't the point of the story. It might happen incidentally, but it's not the goal. Mamet's screenplay for Glengarry Glen Ross is a great example. It's a crime movie about a robbery that takes place in a bottom-of-the-barrel real estate office. And true to genre, these are criminals. They have criminals and witnesses and detectives and red herrings, but Mamet doesn't seem to really care that anyone learns from the crime or by who is caught. In the end of the movie, the guilty are imprisoned, yes, but the story doesn't change any of the characters, nor does it change the audience. I mean, if you think there's a moral, that's great, but to quote one of the great characters in the piece, Ricky Roma, there's an absolute morality? Maybe. And then what? If you think there is, be that thing. Bad people go to hell? I don't think so. If you think that, act that way. And this is where it all started to come together. Michael and I realized that there was this spectrum, which is why this idea of theme is so amorphous. Theme takes on different shapes, depending on where it lies on the continuum. For instance, even though Glengarry Glen Ross is non-traditional in its approach, it still has a theme. It's not just a random story, there is cohesion. These characters are capitalistic to their core, each caught in a financial battle for survival. And Mamet's story is a can of worms. But the can does have a label on it. The label reads, "The American Dream." Abstract as it is, that's the thematic cohesion of this story. Once Michael and I realized that themes can take on different forms, we were able to see them more clearly. And we were able to add and define and create a definition for theme. Tell me if you agree. Movie themes are, drumroll please, a collection of abstract ideas made concrete by the telling of the story. One more time. Movie themes are a collection of abstract ideas made concrete by the telling of the story. And then we were able to take this definition one step further. These abstract ideas, these themes, can be made concrete in 5 specific ways. 1. A theme can be a moral message. For example, the fantasy film Shrek tells us, don't judge a book by its cover. Or 2. Theme can be a descriptive statement like, love conquers all. An idea that the romance film Moulin Rouge firmly embraces without it becoming some sort of moral that we have to live by. Or 3. Theme can take the form of a question. Mamet doesn't deliver a specific message in Glengarry Glen Ross, but he certainly asks, what's happened to the American dream? The 4th, theme can be a binary exploration, such as peace versus violence, or masculinity versus femininity. Spike Lee explores the binary of love versus hate in his classic film Do the Right Thing, which we'll discuss in more detail shortly. And finally, the fifth theme. The fifth can simply be an abstract idea like racism, which the movie Crash explored in all of its manifestations without developing a specific message. So, moral, statement, question, dichotomy, and idea. Those are the 5 thematic forms that we find in films. Now, perhaps there are others, but these are a good foundation for us to appreciate what great filmmakers can do with theme. So let's recap. The 5 thematic forms, moral, statement, question, dichotomy, and idea. These can be delivered across a spectrum from a traditional to a non-traditional approach. So, knowing that, let's take a step back. When a film is born, it's born as a script, and in these pages lie the theme. The screenwriter has already chosen either a traditional or a non-traditional approach, just as they've already chosen any one of the 5 forms, moral, idea, dichotomy, what have you. One choice isn't necessarily linked to the other. What I mean by that is that the screenwriter can portray an amorphous idea such as valor in a traditional way, or a screenwriter can take a concrete moral like treat others as you wish to be treated, but use a non-traditional approach such as symbolism or allusion to imply the message rather than delivering it outright. Which means each of the 5 thematic forms can fall anywhere on the spectrum. Keep that in mind. Each thematic form can fall anywhere on the spectrum. And when a director or a producer or an actor or a cinematographer, when they read these scripts at the beginning, the filmmakers are trying to determine when and how the theme will make its way into the film. For instance, the cinematographer may work with the director to bring the theme more to the surface visually, with certain shots, certain colors, certain camera angles, depicting strength or weakness, camaraderie or cowardice, all depending upon the theme.